Hi there, my name is Jurjan Vroom, and I'd like to tell you something about the Purchasing Strategy Cube. Now, what is a Purchasing Strategy Cube? Well, it's a real cube. It's something I developed last year, and it contains a lot of my experiences during the last 25 years as a purchasing director and supply chain director for various Dutch companies. The Purchasing Strategy Cube is a thought model, and it's used to buy stuff. So basically, if you're a professional buyer, if you're a chief purchasing officer, if you're a purchasing manager, you can use the cube to think on how you will buy your stuff and how you will approach your suppliers. Now let me start with the basics. Those of you who are active in purchasing management may recognize this. This is the Kraljic matrix. You may remember Mr. Kraljic, a former McKinsey consultant, developed this. He actually identified two axes. One is the financial impact axis. It's the one which is vertical, and it represents the value of the products or services which are being bought. Then there's the horizontal axis. It represents the supply risk of obtaining these products or services. So basically, if the supply risk is high, that means, for instance, that there is a monopoly, the products are not abundant. If the supply risk is low, you can get these products everywhere, and there may be even an excess of the product. So then there may be also a lot of suppliers where you can get the stuff from. Now you'll notice four colored squares. One is the blue one, the routine items. Items are obviously products or services. So routine items are characterized by the low supply risk and the low financial impact, right? So let's say the value of the product is low, compared, like for instance, a pack of milk, right? So the value of the product compared to, for instance, a television set is relatively low, right? Television set obviously is more represents more money. Now, so the routine items, next to the routine items, you'll find the bottleneck items. So these are characterized by a high supply risk and still by the same low financial impact. Now, think here of, for instance, something which is cheap. It can be a nut or a bolt or a screw. But if, for instance, it can be relatively cheap. But it can be that if you don't have that bolt, that your whole factory comes to a standstill, right? So you got to think that over. That's called a bottleneck item. Then we go to the green one. It says leverage items. Right now, leverage items obviously represent a higher value, and in this case, they're still low from the supply risk point of view. And then there is the red, pink square. Says strategic items. So this represents a high value product or service with a high supply risk. So there may be just one supplier of this product or service. Okay, now if I go to the back side of the cube, we will find different strategies. It's called the Purchasing Strategy Cube. We will find different strategies representing what we should do, for instance, in the case of a routine item or a leverage item, and so forth. So let's stick now to the routine item. If I go to the back side, you'll see that the routine item can best be tackled by focusing on the processing with your supplier. So that says efficient processing. Yeah. Now, there are different ways of doing that. So how can you do that? Now, we introduced a third axis. We added this to the Kraljic matrix. And the third axis says supplier dominance. right? Now you'll notice here that supplier dominance, we have the blue ones here, and we have, this time we have a couple of blue ones as well. So there are 4 different ways in which we can come to that strategy, right? So I just mentioned the strategy of efficient processing. Now there are different ways. We call in the world of supply chain management, we have the so-called VMI, that's called vendor managed inventory. That means setting up, making sure that your suppliers manage your stocks as a customer. Obviously, this displaces some of the costs throughout the supply chain and means that your supplier may have to do some investments, maybe put some extra people on the payroll to manage your stocks as a client. And obviously that has to be taken into account while you're negotiating with that supplier. On the other hand, there's something else that says CPFR, that means collaborative planning, forecasting, replenishment. I'll talk to that about in the next video. If I look at this end, you'll see electronic data interchange, and the most simple way of handling this is through setting up some consignment stock, as I just mentioned. Now, if I go, for instance, to a leverage item, leverage items, right? So say I have identified the product or service is a leverage item. So how do I go about with a leverage item? The back side of the cube says exploit power. So how do you exploit power? Then again, I go to the other side, the side of the cube, and it gives me different solutions on exploiting power. So it may be that that I set up an auction, right? So there are websites you can set up auctions and so forth, and basically what you try to achieve there is that various suppliers for the same product or service, let's say, go into a fight with each other because they all obviously are looking for your favors. Now, that does not work if a supplier is dominant in the market. And we've seen that a lot a couple of last years where there's a lot of mergers and acquisitions going on also on the supply side. So in this case, you have to actually go into the market and actually organize what we call a tender. In this case, it's a tender 2.0. And in the tender is different to an auction. How a tender is actually a dialogue between suppliers and their potential customers. And in that dialogue, basically, it's an open dialogue, it's an equal level dialogue, and basically suppliers are given the opportunity to actually add value, to show how they can add value to their clients. And I'll tell you about that in a next video. Thanks for watching.